Right, so here we've got the climb of Coll de Rates in Costa Blanca in Spain. It's not far from Calpe or Moreira on the sort of southeast coast of Spain, Costa Blanca. This is a very popular climb with pro teams and local teams in race season, but pro teams come here in the winter to use this climb as a sort of individual time trial test. It's 6.5k, so I think it's 6.5k long, averaging 5 or 6%, and all the pro teams coming to Calpe region in sort of between November and March. It's a very popular climb. Great road surface, quite a steady gradient, not too steep, no real steep ramps, so you can put in a good measured effort over the whole climb, especially if you train with the power meter or something like that. It's quite easy to pace yourself up this climb. So what's a good time up this climb? I think anything under 20 minutes is respectable. Really good times, probably under 16 minutes. I think the KOM's something like 14 minutes. I think that's Ben Herman's from BMC. I think it's just less than 14 minutes, actually, set in January 2016. Look on Strava in a minute and see some other names on the leaderboard, but you know that is going some. I think it was averaging about 480 watts for about 14 minutes, so that's really buzzing along. It's me just coming around and sitting in, following a much lighter guy than me, and using him to pace me up most of the way until I get dropped to the top. Trying to keep a good cadence here at the sort of the bottom stages. Not riding with a power meter, neither of us are, so just going on feel. Probably going a bit quickly at the bottom because of the sort of nervous excitement of putting in a go up here. Really hot day. This is the 31st of August 2015, I think. Probably about 28-29 degrees. You can see how sort of hazy and hot the sky is. It's very humid as well. Not too many people out on the roads around there in the summer. Very popular with cyclists in the sort of winter months when the training camps are doing their thing, but in the summer months when it's sort of high holiday season, you hardly see any cyclists out. You see more foreigners than locals, that's for sure. Spanish cyclists don't tend to like the heat, maybe. Fortunately, a day like today, you do have to log. If you're going for a big loop, you've got to take 2 full bottles with you to the top. It's a fair way to the next cafe or shop or whatever to refill your bottles. You just see that car there, really patient, giving you plenty of room. So this climb is a great climb because it's steady, it's smooth, you can put in a good measured effort, and it's not really exposed to the elements. It's quite sheltered. It's mostly north facing, and it's quite sheltered from the sort of southerly prevailing winds that come off the med, so it never really gets windy in your face. Not that I've ever noticed riding it either. The only thing is in the winter months between about November and sort of mid-Feb, the road stays wet most of the day, unless it's sort of strangely warm, because of being north facing, it doesn't get that much sun and it's in the shade most of the day, and then at night time with sort of mild days and the very cool nights, there's a lot of condensation on the road, and most days it doesn't go, the condensation doesn't go. Just passing a local. So yeah, in the winter months you have to be fairly careful on the descent if you're coming back down the same way. If you descend down the north face towards Tarbena, that road stays mostly dry unless it's rain because it's facing the sun. This is a great descent as well. It's great fun, coolness, and hardly any traffic as well because the route over the top of this hill, it's quite a quiet route. It doesn't lead to many big towns, so you don't really get any cars using it as a passage. that's it. It's a very popular climb. I think in total it goes to sort of total elevation. It's about 600 meters, I think. Yeah, highest elevation 597. Lowest elevation 250 approximately. Strava record, it's a category 2 climb. I think it's quite easy for a category 2 climb, to be honest. It's not that punchy. There's not many ramps, and it's definitely one of those climbs where you can, you know, you've got the benefit of drafting someone as well, because this is a little bit of a steep bit, but there are passages where you're easily doing over 20 km an hour. So if you're riding up with a buddy or two, and you can make use of sitting on the wheels, you can definitely use that to your advantage. Unlike some of the shorter, steeper climbs where, you know, a solo time is the same as 3 guys riding together. This is quite a speedy climb because it's so smooth and quite gentle, and in places you can make use of the drafting, especially if there's a little bit of headwind now and again. You just trying to spin as much as you can. Probably about a quarter of the way through the climb at the moment. Probably a bit more than that actually. So the start of the climb is a kind of long road from village Parthent at the bottom, and it's slightly uphill. It's a very long straight road, slightly uphill until you get to the first left-hander, which is where the climb really starts. Just under a big brick wall and a sort of big house surrounded by large hedges. That's where the climb really starts, and it starts to wind its way up the hill. And then it's got a series of switchbacks on these sort of lower slopes, and then we get to about half distance. You start to sort of cut along the ridge line with the south side of the hill on your left, and it remains basically largely straight right up until the last hairpin. You do a hairpin, then one steep ramp, and then you're at the top where the sort of restaurant is, and the stop-o-mat timing box, if you want to use the timing box. There's a timing box at the bottom where you collect a little ticket. You set off, you get to the top of the climb, put the ticket in the machine, it tells you what time you've done. I don't use it because everyone's on Strava now, so I'm just using my buddy Guy, who's in one of my other videos, to pace me up here. He's probably, I think, 70 kilos, 69, 70 kilos at this point. I'm much heavier, about 90. So I have to put out much bigger power to stay with him at the same speed. But at 70 kilos, I always tell him he should be going up here like a rat up a drain pipe. But he does drop me at the top. I'm sure he could drop me way before the top. We'll see that coming up in a minute. So I'm just going to the front to do a little turn. But the view from when you start to get up a little bit higher now, back down to the sort of Halon Valley. Down there you can see the Halon Valley. You can see town of Halon, Parthent. It's a great view from the top. So, just looking at Strava leaderboard, KOM Ben Herman's BMC Racing, just under 14 minutes. I think about 452 watts, an average speed of 29.4 kilometers an hour. That's just insane. I don't know how that's humanly possible. Looking down the list, who else to recognise? Michal Kuratowski, 27.1 kilometers an hour, 14.26, no power data. Who else have we got? Vincent Pla, 326 watts, 26.4 k's an hour, 14 minutes 50. Who else we got? Thibaut Pinot, it's a name that most people recognise. So on the 10th of December 2015, he went up in 15 minutes 4 seconds, 26 k's an hour, no power data. Probably about 380, 400 watts for someone of his weight, I suppose. Louis Vestra, December the 4th, 2015. So all these are in the sort of November, December months when the big times are set. 25.8 k's an hour, 436 watts for 15 minutes. So that's really going some. Right, these are obviously lightweight climbers. You also got Tinder Clark, 420 watts, 181 beats per minute heart rate, 25 k's an hour, 15:19. Okay, so someone here called John Deere, 383 watts. I think a tractor puts out more power than that, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. So, lightweight climbing times, sub 15 or 15 to 16 minutes. Like I said, anything under 20 minutes is really good going, I think, for a sort of club rider or amateur racer. Some slightly heavier riders. Okay, Taylor Finney, he's about my height, a bit less than me in weight, but 16 minutes 49. So that's pretty good going even for a big guy. So we're just coming to about the halfway mark of the climb actually now. Looks like I'm still doing a turn on the front. This is where it starts to sort of straighten up and cut along the ridge, and you can see the road now for a long way ahead. The switchback stop, and it becomes a bit more sort of punishing because you can see where you've got to go, and it feels like it's going on forever this second half. Whereas the first half is constantly switching back and forth. It's a great climb to do and just do an all-out effort, but normally it's part of a longer ride, so the question is, like, you know, you can do an effort and give it your all, but it's quite deep in the inland, and if you're staying away at one of the coastal resorts, you know, you might have some other climbs. There's a couple of other climbs in the area, sort of on the way back to Calpe, that you might want to save yourself for. So, as an amateur, what power are you going to have to do to get under 20 minutes? Well, for this ride, Strava reckons I did 380 watts for 20 minutes, or just over 20 minutes. Now, I haven't got a power meter, that's Strava's algorithm, based on weight, which is 90 kilos for me, plus 8.5 kilos for bike, plus probably another 800-900 grams of kit, so nearly coming up to 100 kilos of like total rider weight. Strava reckons 380 watts for just over 20 minutes. The guy in front of me, leading me out here, I will tell you, Strava power for him, probably less than 380 watts because he's 20 kilos less. Now, there's a good website called Cycling Power Lab, which I use to compare Strava power algorithm, and it takes into power components such as drag, and you can formulate your coefficient of drag and frontal area by your estimated height and weight, which Strava algorithm doesn't do. I think it just uses the same CDA for everyone. So it takes into account aerodynamic drag, rolling resistance, elevation change in terms of air pressure, drag, and acceleration. So if you set off at 0 speed and you have a final speed, there'll be a power component of acceleration, which Strava doesn't take into account. And it also asks you things like tyre radius, wheel inertia, which is all sort of data you can plug in. So it's trying to, this website, cyclingpowerlab.com, trying to give you a sort of more accurate model, and with a the relatively accurate guess of what the air pressure was on that day and the air temperature. You type in the ride distance, the average grade, type of road surface as well, and Strava doesn't allow you to change the coefficient of friction of the road surface, where Cycling Power Lab does. So this is a very smooth asphalt road, so you're going to roll a bit faster, and you can change that on the inputs. type in your right time, your initial speed and final speed. In this case, initial speed estimated as 20 and final speed is 20 kph. So there's no, acceleration power component. Whereas if you was going from a standing start, from 0 like you would in a sort of time trial, you can enter that. So based on these parameters, the algorithm of Cycling Power Lab comes up with total power for the climb is 300 watts, just over 300 watts at the crank, and about 290 at the hub. Obviously there's a little bit of loss in drivetrain, chain rings, chain cassette. It's only about 5% maximum, I think, unless you haven't lubed your chain in 3 years. So yeah, 380 watts on Strava, 300 watts on Cycling Power Lab. Big discrepancy, big discrepancy, way more than 20%. So what's gone on in Strava? I don't know. I tend to trust Cycling Power Lab, because if you look at the elevation data on Strava, there are a lot of little jumps in the raw elevation, and I think that's a barometric problem with the recording device, which is an iPhone. If I did this with using a Garmin, I think it would be a smooth elevation profile. So those extra sort of peaks and troughs is essentially saying that I've done more work to get up those little mini ramps, which there aren't. I can tell you there aren't any sort of little mini ramps and mini descents. It's constant. So that's probably why Strava's giving a higher estimated power figure. So anyway, going back to the video, looks like I've just been dropped. Getting near the top, I knew it was coming. I felt the pace going, sort of nodding around, shaking around a little bit. I think the gap got to something like 8 seconds, and I brought it back near the top. It looks like I'm bringing it back here a little bit. I remember a guy looking over his shoulder, seeing me coming back, and then he kicks again, which is nice. You see the pace has gone up to about 20 k's an hour now, and it does get a little bit steeper around at the top. I'm really struggling, but we're both trying to keep really high cadence, which is good. I mean, probably only been out the saddle once or twice, and that's not for long periods. That's literally just sort of keep the blood going, stretch the muscles out. Just coming back on him a little bit, and this is basically the sort of nearly very last bit of the climb, which is coming along the south-facing ridge. A couple more bends to go, and then one tight hairpin in the top, which has got a little bit of a steep ramp, and then you're pretty much there. Just trying to hold on here, not let the gap open up too much. See a guy just getting out of the saddle, because I can tell the bike's rocking a little bit in him just there. So he's kicked again, and I've dropped back another, what's that? Probably about 8 seconds now. Maybe a bit less than 8 seconds, maybe about 8 seconds probably. Very demoralising when you see that, but keeping up with him, it's much lighter than me. Look at his Strava power in a minute, compare. So he's coming near the top now. I'm out the saddle just a little bit there. Right, guy's power. Strava. Guy's power, 327 watts. Average speed's a little bit higher than mine, and so for essentially the same time up the climb, shade over 20 minutes, it's 327 watts versus 381 watts. And that's obviously the difference in weight between the two of us. So just gone around the final hairpin there, and this is the very last ramp up towards the top. Just counted gaps at 10 seconds now. 10 seconds doesn't sound like a lot, but look at the physical gap. It's a long way. It's a long way. So this is really close to the top now. This last drag feels like it goes on forever. if you do over 300 watts for over 20 minutes, you know, that's a respectable FTP. That's it. That's the climb done. Turn into the restaurant car park. There's the stop-o-mat machine, so that's kind of the end of the climb. And it's just up to on this little road up to the restaurant, just to take a look at the view. So that's it. Next time we go, try and beat the time up there. Hopefully lost a bit of weight, improve the power to weight ratio a little bit. So, then down and see the Halon Valley there. It's so hazy because it's quite hot. Not nice doing it in that type of heat, carrying all the bottles up there. So there's not much of a gap in the end. There we go, finished.